Author's Note. Hey, smiley face. This is a short introduction for this book. If somebody gifted or bought this book for you, it means that they are somebody with your best interest. If you bought this book for yourself, you have your own best interest. This book is about self-growth. This is not the typical self-help piece, however. Burgeon was created for those that want to find freedom through the removal of negative patterns. This book may be awkward, or it may be weird because of the topics it goes over. But when keeping an open mind and having the humility to question your beliefs, it will change the way you view life. This book talks about becoming free from porn and masturbation. It also talks on retaining sexual energy and more. These are incredibly important topics that are not talked about enough due to their awkward nature. However, somebody needs to talk about them, and this is what this book is for. If you are interested in finding peace and freedom in your life and truly improving yourself, this is the book for you. I love and I'm proud of all of you who are working to discover the truth and who are finding true purpose. From me to you, I wish you the best. Peace, the author. Chapter 1. Introduction. Your greatest superpower is the ability to change yourself. This book is not for the unserious. This book is more for those that want to genuinely grow, find peace, and find freedom from porn. For those interested in quick productivity tips or numbered principles, these will not be found in this book. Instead, this book will provide you with understandings you can use to make your own decisions. Many people think that all they need to do to quit porn is to stop doing it. They say, just stop watching it. Don't open the window. Don't watch porn. Distract yourself. But consider this. Did you ever make the positive choice that you must have porn to masturbate, or that you need porn-induced fantasies to spice up sex with your partner? Or that at certain times in your life you couldn't enjoy a good night's sleep, or perhaps even pass an evening after a hard day at work without surfing for porn? Or that you couldn't concentrate or handle stress without it? At what stage did you decide that you needed porn, that you needed it permanently in your life, feeling insecure, even panic-stricken without porn, without your online haram? The fact is, we never thought over these things when we found it. Scrap the idea of methods, guides, and how-tos. If success were prescriptive, then everybody would be a success. There are many who obsessively browse no-fap material, only continuing in the hope that they one day become successful. If your desire has become dependent, like you are hysterically driven to obtain something, whatever the cost, then somewhere deep down inside you do not believe that you can achieve it. Most likely, those who have been doing nofap or semen retention practices are already familiar with failure. Nofap practitioners are used to saying, if I become free from porn, it would be great. It would be terrible if I could not be free, and so on. Once you become dependent on the object of your desire, you are drawn into such a violent whirlpool that you will exhaust yourself in the struggle. There is no reason to create this unneeded pressure. Understand failure is not falling down. Failure is never having reached a goal ever. And the reason this happens is that a human being is always looking for something to do because he has been conditioned by the concept and by the notion that there is something that, if he does correctly, it will lead him to success. Instead, one must individually understand and address their flawed beliefs and negative patterns to truly create momentum. One must come to terms with truth, because truth is the only thing that can lead to freedom. No guide, no list of steps. None of these things can create deep, meaningful, and lasting understandings that will have positive effects on your life. Only you discovering the truth yourself can do this. Truth-seeking essentially means that you have to understand with deep conviction things you've been programmed to misunderstand. You have to have enough humility and sincerity to be able to replace old ideas with new, however painful they may seem. Freedom comes from the understanding of where things come from, not the conscious attempt to end them. Those who consciously fail may read the same book or strategy repeatedly without anything changing. My favorite quote that summarizes this well is from a villain in Far Cry 3. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. Doing the same thing so many times with the same result is pointless. If you repeat something often to no avail, you misunderstand it or the material does not contain truth. Keep this in mind. Why is PMO most annoying? This is because it is embarrassing to talk about. Due to human nature and shame, it is often kept under wraps, getting progressively worse over the years, trapping the user forever. It is hard to approach friends and family about it because it would seem weird and incredibly awkward. This is the part of it that is most likely the worst. Those with addictions to smoking, food, drugs, and other instant pleasures can approach others and relatively easily find professionals to fix their issues. Societies can criticize the people producing what causes the addiction, and then collective progress can be made. But due to the awkward nature of talking about porn, such a collective sentiment is likely never to happen unless people wake up. PMO definition: porn, masturbation, and orgasm. MO definition: masturbation and orgasm. Pang definition: reminder to have a session, a small reminder / notice that porn is available which happens due to your previous lifestyle. Hypersexualization definition: excessive indulgence in sexual activity and unhealthy sexual beliefs. Inspiration on reading. Inspiration is perishable. Act on it immediately. If you are inspired to read this book, consider yourself lucky. Many would not have found this and would miss out on the choice made available to them. If you want to postpone reading this book until later, read it now anyway. There is no later. Most of our suffering comes from avoidance. If you truly want to become the best version of yourself and to become more capable, you should only place the importance on finishing this material. The only one that can do this is you. Only you can heal yourself. One thing that must be done, however, is you must put down your ego while reading. If you do not have any humility while reading, you will not be able to absorb any new ideas or understandings. If you think you already know all this, then you should already be free. Keep this in mind, you cannot change yourself without humility. One of the things that Krishnamurti, philosopher, talks about is being in an internal state of revolution. You should always be internally ready for a complete change. Whenever we say we're going to try to do something or try to form a habit, we're wimping out. P.S. Don't skip chapters. Every chapter is important. I also would like you to approach this book with the aim to gain new insight and understanding. Rather than trying to believe your problems away, evidence shows that you must truly understand the reality of habits / addictions to change your decision making. And blind belief does not help that. I may use the terms good / bad in this book, but when I use those terms, I actually mean leading to freedom or leading to delusion. We have applied that labels good and bad basically to everything, but I want you to step back and digest things for what they really are, without preconceptions blinding your view. Have fun reading. Chapter 2. Stray Cat. When everyone is sick, we no longer consider it a disease. When illness and self-limitation are so normalized that their absence is classed as normal, is classed as unnormal, you know it is deeply ingrained in society. You might have heard of NoFap before, but if you have not, most people hear about it in a similar way, through a YouTube video that popped up in a suggestion, or a link a friend sent to us, or even a meme. If you have been linked to this book, you must have been intrigued to see what lies within. However, for those of you who have already heard of NoFap, you will likely know the sad truth about the community of hopeless users in the same cycle. Most people join the bandwagon of porn, as most people use it, so it must be fine, denouncing any evidence proving them wrong, as they would rather be blissful in ignorance than live in truth. However, nothing can escape the fact that PMO has numerous adverse effects on the casual user and the heavy user alike. Over the decades, hypersexualization has increased, and people are further pushing the limits of what they believe to be acceptable. Questions on purity are answered with delusion, and as a result, purity is ever more thrown out the window. Internet porn adds fuel to the fire in this regard. In this age of information, everything can be accessed immediately for free. This makes impulsive decisions easier, as there is little resistance to getting what you want. This hypersexualization has risen along with porn and masturbation use, which are both damaging to productivity and performance. Pornography and hypersexualization are some of the biggest but at the same time the most overlooked problems of this modern world. If you want to know some stats, the average children have the average age that most people first see pornography is 11 years old. Children under the age of 10 make up 22% of online porn consumption for those under 18. Imagine your 10-year-old son or daughter viewing the front page of a porn site behind closed doors. It is most sickly to think about. This is the modern struggle. Lone individuals summoning inhuman willpower, fasting, meditating, and exercising, up against armies of scientists and statisticians weaponizing abundant food, screens and medicine into junk food, clickbait news, infinite porn, and endless games and addictive drugs. But just what are the negative effects? Porn mainly has a negative effect to do with the dopaminergic dopamine system. Masturbation on its own significantly decreases 30 plus vitamins such as nutrients and bodily energy and life force, what you could call aura. When porn and masturbation are combined, these effects are multiplied. This is important because to have peace of mind, you must have peace of body first. Negative effects span from low energy, low motivation, lessened ability to do work, lowered respect for women, depression, anxiety when interacting with others, porn-induced erectile dysfunction, relationship problems, acne, obsession with porn and fantasy, questioning sexuality despite no previous interest, and more. A general rule of thumb is physical negatives are to do with frequent masturbation and mental negatives are to do with porn. People believe no fat provides benefits, but it is really the effect of PMO being it is really the negatives of PMO itself being absent. These negative effects are not anecdotal and do not happen to a minority group. Instead, all people that do PMO suffer some of the degree of these symptoms, no matter if they realize it. Like the analogy of the boiling frog, if a change occurs slowly and we do not know it, we are unlikely to notice. Many problems in our personal lives could be directly or indirectly related to PMO, yet we may be none the wiser. However, there is not much point in proving these negative effects over again, as the neurochemical negative effects of porn are scientifically and anecdotally well understood. Just ask any ex-user that has been entirely free from porn and masturbation. Unless they thought they would gain superpowers using NoFap, the user will explain the positive changes they experienced after leaving. So let's return to the idea that we might have discovered NoFap through a YouTube video. Hundreds of YouTubers have made videos on quitting porn and masturbation. However, with thousands of videos advising about quitting. However, there lies a sad truth in most advice given by these self-development YouTubers. Mentors has a meager success rate. This is because people approach leaving PMO with a need for motivation. Some things can be broken with motivation, but habits/addictions cannot. Many influencers also use motivation as the primary cause for doing NoFap. Motivation is temporary. To me, the mind should be a servant and a tool, not a master. The monkey mind should not control and drive you 24/7. Personally, I'm not going to be the most successful person on the planet, nor do I want to be. I just want to be the most successful version of myself while working the least hard possible. And with energy sinks like porn and masturbation in life, it will hinder these kinds of aspirations and journeys of growth. False incentives. Be aware not to base your reasoning for quitting on any false incentives. Some of us may want to quit to appease our friends, make our partners happier, be better than people we view as degenerates, or become more disciplined. Even though these are great ways to discover semen retention or no porn, these incentives create the perfect excuse for us to relapse when we experience negative emotions. I don't care about what my friend thinks. It is not a big deal anyway. She's already happy. It is not that bad. I can just do it less, and I can still be disciplined. I will just do it rarely. I will just watch the soft stuff. False incentives provide the ammo to fuel your brain's defensive mechanisms. As a result to what our brains interpret as a threat, we have some key reactions. We dismiss opposing views and make illogical justifications and excuses for our actions. Defense mechanisms are what your brain uses when you are in a reactionary state. So instead of having a false incentive, you should have an incentive grounded in yourself. Forget the initial incentive for being interested or wanting to quit. Freedom must be found on one's own accord, not by or for external influence. Everyone is caught up in suffering or conflict, but most people are unconscious of that conflict. They are merely seeking substitutions, solutions, and escapes. Whereas if they see seeking escapes and begin to question the environment that causes the conflict, then the mind becomes active, acute, alive, and intelligent. Therefore, do not quit for anybody else, quit for yourself. Chapter 3. Effects. Leaving PMO provides many benefits and positives. As detailed in the introduction, these positives come from the changes in our neurochemistry, bodily nutrients, and our ability to control our reactions to our emotions. However, technically, leaving PMO has no positives. It is just the removal of negatives. Imagine someone said they wore shoes all day and that they were too tight, just so that they could experience pleasure when they took them off in the evening. Do you think that makes sense? Of course not. You wouldn't say that tight shoes provide pleasure, but as soon as a porn user finishes a PMO session, their dopamine levels crash lower than a non-user. They feel irritable, similar to if they were wearing tight shoes. Chemicals also flood the brain, causing lethargic effects, but not relaxing because of the dopamine drop after orgasm. Thus, the porn trap is similar to wearing tight shoes just to obtain the pleasure of taking them off and doing this over and over again. Porn users, just like drug users, are constantly trying to get back to the same level of happiness and relaxation that non-users experience in everyday life. However, you don't notice this. It has happened so slowly, so gradually, that like the boiling frog analogy, you did not notice. Do not make the mistake of normalizing porn, because people have used it for so long, they find it hard to relate to when they didn't, and most use language to suggest benefits, or that leaving PMO is not the normal. While in a societal sense, it may be the norm in a bodily sense. In a bodily sense, it is not natural. Naturally, nobody has urges to watch lewd video clips as a reaction to emotion. Nobody tries to escape negative emotions by tricking our bodies into connections to partners we will never know. Porn is not natural and never will be. It is a man-made trap. Masturbation too has been around for a while, but on its own, it still drains your energy and it's just another outlet for hypersexualization. Therefore, make this key understanding. The benefits of leaving porn/masturbation are not direct benefits, but are just the end of negatives. Dopamine. Contrary to popular belief, dopamine's main effect is not pleasure. Dopamine's primary effect is to do with the anticipation/excitement. Some may even call it the motivation chemical. Dysfunctions in the dopaminergic system result in unhealthy changes in anticipation, and it causes immeasurable effects on a person's life. What happens with porn is the dopamine system becomes downregulated. When we are with a single partner, the body limits the amount of dopamine that can be created. Porn, however, releases more and more dopamine when you seek and search through multiple partners for just the right video. This is called the Coolidge effect. A male rat feels satisfied after mating with the same female a few times. Each time he mates with her, less dopamine is released, and he takes longer breaks. This is good, otherwise he'd exhaust himself for no reason. But if he sees a brand new female, a new dopamine surge takes over, and he's compelled to mate again. As more and more new females are introduced, he will eventually collapse from exhaustion. What happens with porn is the same effect. With people online that has primitive parts of your mind views as partners. Because this happens, an unnatural and irregular amount of dopamine is released. You may think that a huge amount of dopamine would make you feel better, but that is a misunderstanding of how dopamine works. You could compare it to putting 10,000 volts through a machine that works perfectly fine at 240. You don't get enhanced performance, you merely cook the machine. To compensate for the unnaturally high amount of dopamine that has entered your body, your dopamine system gets downregulated. Here there's a graphic that shows pretty much a circle with a notch at the top and then another circle, and you can see that the dopamine going from the actual thing that creates dopamine to the receptors, and then there's an arrow that says downregulation above it, and in the next image there's less receptors. In the caption it says figure 1. When fewer neurotransmitter receptors are formed, it is called downregulation. You may think that the body makes everything fine again, but this is ignoring the side effects of this downregulation. First of all, the body builds a dependence upon porn as it becomes further downregulated every consecutive viewing, and nothing else will give that same level of dopamine it needs to feel normal. The second and worst effect of this downregulation is that things that provide lesser dopamine now provide even less dopamine. Therefore, you have less or even no incentive to do these things. Things like reading, having a single focus, enjoying creativity, cooking well, taking care of yourself, etc. are less satisfying to do. It can get to the point that those far into the trap of porn do not take care of themselves at all. One of the most prevalent problems that porn creates is anxiety. The misdirection of sexual energy also causes a lack of confidence, and testosterone is lowered indirectly through self-neglect, part of dopamine desensitization. It also makes you less incentivized to be social through less of a dopamine reward, which in turn amounts to anxiety. Some make fun of these people who go into a state of disarray, kumas, but it is a sad story. TikTok, video games, and procrastination all become more attractive when the dopaminergic system becomes downregulated. Life becomes more hedonistic, and the lack of growth eventually brings pain. The good thing is that the damage to the dopamine receptors is not permanent. You have the ability to upregulate your dopamine receptors after this damage by stopping porn and other overstimuli. Your greatest superpower is the ability to change yourself. Increased brain fog is another effect that porn creates. Porn lowers brain chemicals, acetylcholine, vital in cognitive functioning. This can make active users feel like they're less able to function actively than before. However, not many people realize it because this happens slowly. Porn has also been studied to decrease grey matter in the brain. Dopamine is the reason that motivation does not work for becoming free from porn and addictions in general. Dopamine is a large part of motivation itself, and if the anticipation of porn outweighs the anticipation of quitting, then you will relapse. Then what works? Understanding of truth. Deep understandings that are not beliefs that bring reality to life, that bring reality to the light. This is what works. Porn use can also contribute to the dopamine deficient depression, as the low dopamine periods without porn are not at the levels they are meant to be. This can cause low energy, drowsiness, and the ability to feel enthusiastic about anything, lowered motivation, and excessive sleep. PIDE, porn-induced erectile dysfunction, is another effect that comes from porn use, usually long-term. For those who have not experienced it, they may say that will never happen. However, as consumption becomes more impulsive and obsessive, it can make in real life experiences not turn you on. There are even more mental and physical negatives of porn I could dive into. I could go into all of the complex neurochemistry, and I could go into the scientific terms, etc., but I won't obsess over it. Why? Because simply knowing the negatives of porn is not what will allow you to leave. There are detailed and reviewed studies on the effects of porn, such as Your Brain on Porn and other internet subcultures. However, these are not enough to rid the mind of the brainwashing and are never enough reasoning to make the user quit. This is because your brain does not care about negatives when it is in a reactionary state. It reacts to emotions through the pathways you have used the most. Think about your other negative habits. Does knowing how they impact your health really stop you? MO and endorphins. Sex is not the same as masturbation and orgasm, but semen release still has the same effects for both of them. However, MO is void of love and meaning. It is wasting energy for little purpose. When the body releases sperm, it expends significant amounts of vitamin A, absorbic acid, vitamin B, riboflavin, niacin, pantothenic acid, pyridoxine, cobalamin, biotin, choline, calciferol, alpha-tocopherol, folic acid, phylloquinone, menadione, calcium, chloride, chromium. Chromium is listed twice. Copper, iodine, iron, magnesium, manganese, molybdenum, phosphorus, potassium, selenium, sodium, sulfur, zinc, and other nutrients. This release results in lowered bodily energy, lowered hair health, lowered libido/aura, possible acne, and other effects. Semen release also increases prolactin in both sex and masturbation, and too much prolactin is negative for male health. People call masturbation self-love, but it's really self-sabotage. When sexual energy is harnessed, it is a tool. But when untrained, it has nothing to do but a restriction to productivity, if that is what you seek. I have talked about dopamine being mostly an anticipation chemical. This is true, as it is released before an orgasm during the seek and search of online partners. So what is the effect we believe to be pleasure after an orgasm? This is not caused by dopamine but by endorphins, bodily produced opioids. On orgasm, endorphins are released. However, at the same time, the dopamine that was elevated in the build-up crashes down. The orgasm doesn't relax you, it drains your energy. As soon as you finish, you're in the calm down / crashing state, feeling crappy, and are most likely to get irritated and impatient with other people. Real relaxation is feeling of peace and balance, and it would restore your energy when you are truly relaxed and confident. It makes you more creatively productive. However, porn users cannot help with relaxation. Only freedom is relaxing. Porn users, just like all other drug users, are constantly trying to get back to the same level of happiness and relaxation that non-users experience in everyday life. If you remove all dopamine from a human, even if you give them heroin, it will not be addictive. Opioids and endorphins are not what makes you want to do something, and if dopamine did not exist, they would not make you addicted. You do not use porn for the orgasm, but for the dopamine release before the orgasm happens. It is a really strange thing when dopamine anticipates itself. People justify by saying it feels good or it is no big deal, but the reality is they do not do it for the orgasm, they do it for the dopamine. There was a study where scientists used a dopamine blocking agent in rats to see what would happen. They did nothing. They did not drink, they did not eat, and in a short amount of time all the rats died. It does not matter how appealing something is, the health of your dopamine system makes it more likely or less likely you will be attracted to the thing. You may have goals and dreams in the sense of your higher being such self, but with the downregulated dopamine, those will stay as hopes and dreams, as the dopamine of completing those is less than porn. I hope you can see why this leads to living like a slob and a lack of care for oneself. The stereotype of porn addicts looking like a slob is true because dopamine desensitization makes them not care about or spend any time on their appearance. However, if one takes control of the dopaminergic system, they can take control of their life. We have lost all sense of living normally, simply, directly. To get back to that normality, the simplicity, the directness, you cannot follow methods. You cannot merely become automatic machines, and I'm afraid most of us are seeking methods because we think that through them we shall realize fullness, stability, and permanency. To me, methods lead to slow stagnation and decay, and they have nothing to do with real self-growth, which is after all the summation of intelligence. Chapter 4. Brainwashing. Before you can lie to another, you must first lie to yourself. The brainwashing or PMO is the leading cause of failure for people that are trying to leave PMO once and for all but end up failing. Brainwashing is the ingrained idea that porn provides any benefit. It is also the idea that you are entitled to sex or porn and that sex should be the highest goal in your life. It includes our upbringing in society, reinforced by the brainwashing of our addiction and combined with the most powerful incentives, our friends, relatives, and colleagues. The phrase giving up is a classic example of brainwashing, implying genuine sacrifice. The beautiful truth is there's nothing to give up. On the contrary, you are facing freedom. It takes a level of contrarianism to say, nope, I'm going to do this thing. Nope, I'm just going to do my own thing. That is courage. Ironically, the most powerful force in this confusion is the user themselves. It's a fallacy that porn users are weak-willed or physically weak people. Perhaps this saddest aspect of porn is to observe users that they put themselves as unsuccessful losers and insufferable introverts. A friend could likely be more interesting in person if they hadn't put themselves down by wasting their energy through PMO. In this age of information, individuals are trained to think whatever society tells them to. This over-socialization denies intelligence. When technology has this impact on you, you are no individual. When one sets themselves apart from the status quo, they can find clarity. For example, porn being normal or cultured will be programmed into your mind unless you stop denying intelligence and actually process things yourself. One aspect of brainwashing is stress. Porn has subconsciously registered in billions of people's brains as a method to relieve stress. Users believe that it allows them to relax, but move away from their life's difficulties and that it benefits them. This belief, however, is interpreting everything backwards. Porn creates the stress. Porn creates stress by overstimulating your dopamine receptors. Users elude themselves into believing that it is required for relieving stress. Even before they became users, they had no need, and to relieve the pressure, they use it again. Our brain builds a response to emotions that trigger pangs. These emotions are fear, anxiety, and boredom. Fear in a user's life typically comes from everyday events that happen in life, such as fear of getting laid off, fear of failure, or having a bad day. In these cases, porn is imagined as a savior, or at the end of the day, it will make everything better, even though it will make everything harder to cope with. Anxiety and uncertainty are also emotions where a similar response happens. In response to not being able to work out how something will play out, this plagues our minds with negative thoughts. Pangs can occur in these moments because porn is interpreted as something that fixes negative emotions. Instead, it creates these negative emotions, worsening over time. PMO is a constant state of anticipation, and then temporary clarity over and over again. When using porn, the prefrontal cortex is shut off, and after it turns back on. That is where post-nut clarity comes from, because your intellectual brain is effectively deactivated. We are not really attracted to the lewd clips we browse through. We are not really attracted to the disgusting fetishes we pick up along the way, as the old content does not suffice. But we have been conditioned into thinking that this is what we want. We think this is what benefits us. Do you know why there is disgusting porn? Because they get bored of the non-disgusting porn. The higher your feelings of shame, sin, or anxiety, and the more taboo and fetishized the content is, the higher dopamine rush you feel. The only increases the strength of the habitual pathway, causing more desensitization. Porn is actually relatively easy to quit when you understand its true nature. This is because it provides no advantages. Then you can completely throw it out of your life and it will not even be attractive. You wouldn't eat poison in moderation. Choice is our greatest power in life. Once you realize you have this power, you're like an eagle who grew up thinking he was a chicken, living with other chickens, but one day learned he could fly. We deny our own intelligence through limiting ideas and beliefs. One of these is the disregard for our own ability. Our own power, however, this is in our control. Imagine your limbic brain, monkey brain, is a dumb electrical appliance. If you unplug 99 out of 100 power cords, false reasons to use porn, it doesn't know you did that. All it knows is it still has power. You have to unplug every cord, every reason, then you'll find peace like you've never known. Be careful of your own negativity. Pessimism is self-fulfilling. If you say you are going to fail, you nearly always will. If you say something will be bad, you will nearly always perceive it that way. There is no benefit to creating that negativity in the first place. Peace comes from truth. But how can you find truth? One of the ways in which I know that I'm finding the truth of something is the way that the problem is solved for good. Example of what coping users say. Porn is freedom. This is a lie. Any freedom that leads to craving is not freedom. I can quit anytime I want. I just don't want to quit right now. Then will you ever quit? How much longer do you have to lie to yourself thinking that there is a benefit to porn? Someone repeating these mantras to themselves is a form of subconscious rationalization used to justify their biological addiction. In reality, the key to the mental prison of porn is in your own mind. You cannot ask another person for this key. One must find it for themselves. The answers lie within yourself. Yet we have been told to look everywhere but ourselves for answers. Brainwashing through bad advice. Unfortunately, the world is filled with bad advice. So much, in fact, that it makes sense for the majority to not be successful in what they truly want to achieve. The individual has to filter out the effective information from the ineffective information. It takes effort, but it is a liberating process that provides one with a steering wheel of life. However, most have been conditioned to hand over reins to the professionals who seemingly know everything. This opens the gates for shallow advice, con artists, and wasting time. The trouble with advice that does not work is that those that preach it pronounce their advice as a given fact. For one who truly wants to understand the scope of their addiction and how recovery works, if they do not unlearn these false understandings and unproductive ways of thinking, then they will be forever held to them. The bad advice causes one to feel the need to constantly reinforce their newly picked up beliefs. However, the constant assertion of belief is an indication of fear. There are many unproductive activities that people trying to leave porn and masturbation practice. One common thing is counting days, where a person counts to an arbitrary number of days for progress. This may seem like a good way to set goals, but the reality is freedom is found on day 1, not at day 30, not at day 90, not at day 1000. Freedom is found when you let go of the attachment to porn to your life, when you stop chasing. You do not need to keep rewarding yourself for not harming yourself, otherwise you might still see attraction in instant pleasures, or you might be looking for pleasure through progress. Both of these things are not productive. Counting days adds extra pressure, and then it comes with a notation that not self-sabotaging is impressive. It is just wise if one seeks a productive life, nothing more. People have this idea of one step at a time, where they want to take each day at a time after quitting porn. However, this comes with the notion that something bad is happening, like something is being lost from your life. Would you take one day at a time after you became free from prison? No, because you would no longer be trapped. Nothing changes physically, but just these changes in ideology makes it so a person who wants to find freedom treats it like the opposite, like a prison. Another way this attachment to porn can appear is during doing a certain amount of days, such as 7, 14, or 30 days of no PMO/MO. I do not understand it. Why return to something that has no benefit in your life? Why view this glimpse of freedom to dunk your head back in under the water? These people still believe it has some value in their lives, and it might if they see a benefit in instant pleasures. But if you do not see a benefit in instant pleasures, there is nothing in porn that you desire. Another flawed ideology is weaning. Weaning is the process of spreading usage apart over time or lowering the severity of a bad habit. This is typically used for drug addictions, where the body has a physical withdrawal and negative reaction from the absence of a specific drug. However, porn does not have any physical withdrawal. Therefore, weaning would only make sense if it worked for any mental withdrawal. The thing is, in the time between sessions, a person will start to fantasize about their next usage. They will build up dopamine and anticipation for it. In a sense, this can be even worse than not weaning because of this higher amount of anticipation. You do not need to wean something when you can find freedom in the present moment. By the way, it doesn't say this in the book, but weaning is actually another word for cutting down. The last major flawed ideology I will write about is monsters. You may have heard the term little monster and big monster to describe parts of the human psyche. These are attempts at trying to simplify the dynamic of the human mind. However, it fails at doing this. It creates a me versus them scenario. You create this imaginary enemy, this monster/primitive brain, and you imagine yourself fighting this figure. The reality is, no big or little monster exists. Your primitive brain is not out to get you. It is an integral part of your system. and one thing that is there to help you, not to hinder you. And you must say, this is wrong, but it takes away control from your life. And this may be true, but this occurs when you have a cognitive dissonance, when you're trying to force a belief/truth that you do not understand or that you have not figured out yourself. Your primitive mind will not ignore a solved, understood truth, but it will ignore a belief. And some may say there is no difference, but this is false. Truth is digested and critiqued, found by the individual, while belief is easily unfounded, based on little substance and often external. This is the difference. You can't force understanding of truth when you have an expectation of what it is. You must be open to whatever result there when you find the answer. For example, if turned out to be beneficial for someone who wants a productive life, it would be intelligent to use it. Or, if it turned out to be unproductive, you should not, and find freedom. With this in mind, you can use your deductive capabilities to quantify truth, and only when you have humility and sincerity. So it is not productive to hate parts of your own mind, and the system that makes up your being. Self-hatred has no benefit or purpose. There is no invisible enemy that is out to get you every day to force you into bad habits. It is just your brain making the most logical conclusions and actions based on your understanding of what truth is. It was not some mysterious monster in my mind which forced me to use porn, but it was me all along. Freedom is not found through substitution or escape from the environment. Freedom is found through understanding the nature of what holds us back. Not through fighting or hating these things. We want to fight problems more than we want to understand them. When you discover the truth, bad habits can disappear with little effort through understanding. Only when the mind is still, tranquil, not expecting or grasping or resisting a single thing, is it possible to see what is true. It is the truth that liberates, not your effort to be free. Chapter 5. Love. Love is an important part of your understanding, relating to semen retention and pleasures. The understandings and the changes happen deep within the mind because addiction, pleasure chasing, is not a one-off thing. It is a way of living. If your identity and ideals do not match up with your actions, then you will have a dissonance that can only be fixed by A, reverting to pleasure chasing, or B, chasing your identity, ideals, and understandings, and in brackets, the self. Using another as a means of satisfaction and security is not love. Love is never security. Love is a state in which there is no desire to be secure. It is a state of vulnerability. Sex isn't fulfilling. Intimacy is. Intimacy is actually an emotional need, not just physical, even for men. Porn does not provide intimacy. It keeps you from finding it. When sex is natural and normal, it is a game played according to rules that you make up yourselves without giving a moment's thought to how others do it or how it is supposed to be done. Fixating on the naked sexual parts of women dull your ability to appreciate the beauty of their smile or their eyes lighting up when they talk or laugh. After quitting porn, you'll be amazed at how beautiful everyday women are. The skewed image porn creates, that society accepts, skews the vision of what a healthy relationship looks like. It makes it difficult for people to find meaningful partners because they're looking for perfection, and when they do find partners, they want them for pleasure, not for connection. Such a shallow desire is just another craving for pleasure. A lot of external battles happen because your internal state is not good. When you're naturally internally peaceful, you're going to pick fewer fights. You're going to be more loving without expecting anything in return. That will take care of things on the external relationship front. Love is a gift of energy. It is you saying, I provide myself in all that I am to you, and you provide all that you are to me. It is a gift of energy and purity. If you do not believe someone deserves this gift in love, do not provide it. This is the nature of love, a mutual transaction. Yet people these days are so cheap, they partake in relationships that do not favor them, all for the chase of pleasure and feeling the desire to be loved. If one looks for purity, instead of thinking of when the partner will be in the bedroom, then one will experience real love, a love untainted by what porn has tried to replicate but has failed in doing. This innocence between two partners which is meaningful is true beauty. Fear of love. Some who lead porn or who practice semen retention gain an unhealthy view of relationships. In their attempt to lead porn, they block out all sexual thoughts and they numb themselves into a weird state where they are where they are fearing visiting social media or they avoid women. This fear only creates disadvantages and is not productive. If you partake in this unhealthy view of relationships, where you fear anything sexual or intimate, your body can go, "Hey, I guess we're just not going to have sex. We're not going to be able to masturbate, etc." Avoidance of intimacy and love can cause you to become more submissive, and it can cause your libido and energy to go down. This avoidance proves you want to escape love/intimacy rather than understand it. Instead of the toxic idea that blocking out something and fearing it will help anything, it is more productive to build up a healthy view of what relationships really mean and the value of a sincere, loving partner. Some also fear loss because they see all love has an end. But then again, all things have an end, and that is where value originates. In relationships, cherish what you have, but do not cling on to the past. It will lead you nowhere. You can have sex and still retain your energy. You just need to keep it in moderation, depending on how much you value the energy you keep. If it becomes a thing you look to after the end of a tough day, it can fill the same role as porn did. Sex is the exchange of intimacy and purity between two individuals. One who partakes in sex too often loses their purity. This can be noticed in their demeanor, their attitude, and everything about them. For one that truly cares about their partner, they will feel bad about taking away their purity through sexual acts. However, if the trade is mutually beneficial, there is nothing to worry about. Obsession. There is also obsession. Obsession is good for creativity when you give it limits, but it has no place in relationships. Attachment builds toxicity, negativity, and tunnel vision. The big picture is thrown out in place of a diminished view. If you want to grow as a person, you don't want to be obsessed with someone, or even the idea of someone. It builds negativity. You don't have to trust me on this. You can probably imagine many who are love obsessed who throw out reason in the chase of their desires. One rule of thumb I have learned with relationships is that you do not want to be attached by the hip to your partner if you want positivity in your life. You want to work in parallel, providing support for one another, but neither should be dependent on another. Breaking out of attachment may be difficult, but it will provide freedom. It takes introspection and humility. In reaction to breakups, something in your mind may view pornography as a way to cope. However, porn is void of love. The beauty, purity, and benefit of a truly loving relationship are absent. Understand love in its ways, and you do not need to cope. When a partner is lost, you can use the sexual energy to transmute into other areas of your life, rather than wasting it on masturbation. It is okay to feel the pain of a partner leaving, but porn is no light in the dark. After going through something tough, why punish yourself even more? If you desire sexual release, MO, brackets, not PMO, it is an option, but as said before, transmuting kept energy has more of a benefit, and you don't want to be wasting your energy so freely. Memories of love never pass. They linger, guide, and influence long after the source of stimulation has faded. There is nothing new in this. Every person who has been moved by genuine love knows that it leaves enduring traces upon the human heart. The effect of love endures because love is spiritual in nature. The man who cannot be stimulated by great heights of achievement by love is hopeless. He is dead, though he may seem to live. If you believe yourself unfortunate because you have loved and lost, perish the thought. One who is loved truly can never lose entirely. Love is temperamental and transitory. It comes when it pleases and goes away without warning. Accept and enjoy it while it remains, but spend no time worrying about its departure. Worry will never bring it back. Entitlement. Some people believe that they are entitled to sexual release, but entitlement is a disease. People feel entitled to love and pleasure because they chase pleasure and don't love themselves. Young men have been raised by fake partners on the internet. Thousands of mates who they expect to present themselves when they desire. A lot of us were introduced by sexual ideas and what we believe to be love through pornography. The pure and beneficial act of two sincere partners bonding is morphed into this lustful simplified vision. Into this lustful simplified version that we take to be what love is. This entitlement transfers poorly into new relationships because all the mind wants to think about is when you will get to sleep with your partner. However, by reframing our views on what love is and the value of relationships, we can find the true value of love beyond pleasure. Chapter 6. Neurology. Porn is not a disease in a personal sense. Porn is a voluntary behavior. You may push back against this statement. However, the mind works with benefits/negatives. You only use porn if you see some benefit to it, and only if it is the most attractive path at one time. So how do you stop seeing the benefit of porn? Well, porn provides instant pleasure, and if you see a benefit in instant pleasure, why would you not consume porn? The thing with negative habits and negative patterns is that you cannot just pick and choose which destructive activity to keep. The route which you must dig to become free from one will also keep you free from the others. If one chases pleasure and they will remove porn from their life, it will just be a waiting game. They look for it again. If one chases feeling or emotion, they will feel entitled and look for it again. People crave image and they crave feelings. Craving image is the desire to be loved or the desire to be superior. Craving feeling is the desire for pleasure or the desire to take unhealthy risks. These things are the main roots of negative habits and patterns in people. First, on the leftmost hand side, there's neurosis in pink. Then there's crave image in light red, and then there's blue and then on the bottom there's crave feelings in light blue. Then there's to be loved in white, to be superior in black, to pleasure in white, and risk in black again. And then there's a bunch of items here. To grow, for one that craves love, they need to learn to love themselves. For one that craves superiority, they need to have humility and sincerity to grow, otherwise their destructive nature will turn inward. For one that craves pleasure, they need to understand peace and freedom are what they are really looking for. For one that craves risk, they need to discover their own value. These things are building blocks of the mind, what society, what people base their entire lives around. However, this craving has a destructive effect on others and themselves. A human will normally crave and chase for their entire life. They will build an image of perfection, of a possible utopia where everything would be fine. All they need to get is what they have wanted. However, everything you have ever desired is right here in the present moment. Peace is not in the future. However, chasing pleasure and craving these things distracts one from peace. Craving avoids one from asking important questions. It consumes time and fills the mind. Yet the reality is that if people who crave stop craving, they would have to face the fact that they have nothing else of substance in their life. Due to this chasing, they have made no meaningful action, and any meaningful action they may have made has been forgotten and lost to time. Truth hurts, so the mind typically avoids it. This is why you can't fix everyone. Why many people will always be consumed with bad habits and destructive activities. If one is not aligned with truth or does not have the humility to change, nothing will be done. They can read all of the addiction recovery books on the planet, they won't change. If you do not want to waste your time, do not force people to change. Provide them with the door, but they must turn the key. Do not look down on people who are content with living a destructive life. However, otherwise, you place yourself above others and your vision is once again blinded. Have compassion for them. Fear. Emotion is our evolved biology predicting the future impact of a current event. In modern settings, it's usually exaggerated or false. This does not mean emotion is not useful, but it is not a reliable source of information, especially when emotion is all that you are thinking about. For example, negative thoughts usually attach themselves to everything. If somebody is only thinking about negative thoughts, they will attach negativity to everything. Even if the things they are looking at have not changed, their clarity is taken away via these negative thoughts. Fear is the destructive energy in man. It withers the mind, distorts thought. It leads to all kinds of extraordinarily clever and subtle theories, absurd superstitions, dogmas and beliefs. It is easy to say you should not fear or similar inspirational quotes, but this does not do much. What makes a difference is the realization that you fear what does not yet exist. As you fear what is in your control, do not disregard your inability to be an individual through this fear. Also, if you accidentally see someone naked, you see porn by accident, you will not create a negative dopamine effect. However, actively seeking these things does. You do not need to be afraid of watching movies where there are sexual scenes, or afraid of lewd material being sent by some idiot. You can freely change your environment to where you see these things rarely. However, you do not need to fear these things. Your view completely determines their ability to impact you. Everyone is failing, so how isn't it likely that I too will fail? This is what is called the failure circle. One person fails because they may lack humility, and then those that hear of this person's failure get doubt and fear of failure and thus slip up. Their slip-ups are reported within an online community, and others who see them get doubt and fear as well, and it goes on and on and on. They get a false impression that it's hard, and thus it becomes hard. However, when one reframes the way they look at PMO use and no longer sabotaging themselves, then they do not need to care for these others. To make progress, you must look out for yourself. One thing you may do after finding freedom is fear losing this freedom. You can find comfort by realizing you can do whatever you want with your life. You can go back to self-sabotaging through porn, but will you? Is there any benefit to instant pleasures? You do not need to fear losing freedom. You can do whatever you want. Habitual pathways. Habits are everything. Everything we are. We are trained in habits from when we are children, including potty training, when to cry and when not to, and how to smile and when not to. These things become habits, behaviors we learn and integrate into ourselves. Many of our flawed beliefs and delusions are fundamental. Created through childhood, influenced by our parents and people around us. If we do not make ourselves aware to these influences on our ideas, we will be a slave to the environment. These ideas could be something like interacting with people means yelled at, therefore I will not interact with people, or nothing I do is good enough, so I won't do anything, etc. When we're older, we're a collection of thousands of habits constantly running subconsciously. We have a little bit of extra brain power in our neocortex for solving new problems. You become your habits. However, you can change these habits and the way your mind views the world by increasing your neuroplasticity. This takes the humility to change and to question the very things as your ego, your current beliefs, and life direction. You have to take a second to sit down to thoroughly observe your patterns. Do you move when you don't want to move? Do you get angry when you don't get angry? You have to fix these things about yourself. You have to give a F about yourself, and that makes life so much better. Jarzy on Freud. When we make a conscious effort to change, these pathways can change, but it requires a lot of humility and it requires one to lower their ego. The self-improvement trap is just a dressed up form of self-conflict. Let's say you self-improve enough to where you gain your dream form. You're productive, you no longer use porn, you're physically strong, and you are confident. The thing is, after all this self-improvement, where is your direction? Most do not want to ask this question because they would rather be consumed by the repeated attempts to self-improve. Saying you need to improve is also saying that there is something wrong with you currently. You are not satisfactory. This thought of not being good enough looms over a self-improver to where they constantly feel like they are missing the mark of their ideal self. When they fail at improving, they use their bad habits to cope, so it cycles on and on. The key, if you want to become a better version of yourself, is to aim to be good, not perfect. Even after that, you should think about what interests you, past the point of improvement. If you do not answer this question, improvement will be the only thing you do. The way I look at it, I'm not improving myself, but I'm just practicing life in a way that I find most satisfactory, life that is most purposeful. When desire does not lead to peace, I still find satisfaction in making accomplishments and finding freedom on different levels. monetary, and etc. In any case, most people doing self-improvement have no idea why they're practicing it. They want to be better, they want to get women, they want to be more confident. However, even though the idea of self-improvement is a long-term benefit, the result for these people is still short-term pleasures. Think about your reasons for being interested in self-improvement, and you can find out many things that will likely bring clarity. What you call self-discipline is merely an adjustment to an environment which we have not completely understood. Therefore, in any adjustment, there must be the denial of intelligence. Why has one ever to discipline oneself? Instead of this avoidance, this conflict, one can understand the nature of what they create a conflict with, and then the mind will become free. We guard our problems. Your problems become your companions. They are your pet rocks. You groom and nurture them and secretly hope that they will never leave you, for they have become part of you, and you need them as beacons to keep you fixed to the same path you have walked for dozens of years. For if someone truly took away your problems, you would go mad. You would not know how to function. You would be shaken from your conditioned existence. You would roam aimless in the street. Your entire life would likely fall apart. With nothing to guide you, with no railroad tracks to follow, the world would explode into a sea of choices and possibilities. What would you do then? But how would you choose? Our problems help us avoid this responsibility for direction, and if we do not confront the endless possibilities that will arise once we find freedom from these problems and only hide away from them, one will be forever attached to their problems. Once recognized, the problem of PMO becomes a direction to work towards. Once it is overcome, you are lost in your newfound freedom. This is why it is of utmost importance for one to figure out their direction. If you have no use for your freedom, you might as well not attempt to gain it. Think on these things. Chapter 7. Environment. The current environment programs the brain, but the clever brain can choose its upcoming environment. A human being becomes his environment. It is critical to savagely and surgically arrange one's environment in accordance with where one wants to go. Breaking addiction requires a new lifestyle. People struggle with breaking addiction because you have to break the physical addiction, and you also have to change your lifestyle. You have to switch to a lifestyle where you can be happy without that substance. If there is a hole in your life where PMO was, then how do you not expect to fill it? If you still crave pleasure and feeling, then you will not fill that hole with another destructive activity. Then what progress is made? One must change lifestyle and perspective for this to change. Whenever there is lack of understanding of environment, there must be conflict. Environment gives birth to conflict, and so long as we do not understand the environment, conditions, surroundings, and are merely seeking substitutions for these conditions, we are invading one conflict and meeting another. External influence. Addiction holds together fake relationships and fake activities. If I drink to be social and do that enough, I'll find myself hanging out with people I wouldn't spend time with otherwise. When I'm sober, I can't tolerate these people, the topics we discuss, or the venues we visit. I can only do it drunk. It can go the other way as well. Let's say hypothetically all of your friends are linked to you by some sort of debilitating habit, recovering together. How do you move on from that without being a complete loner? How can you move on from your addiction without survivor's guilt? This is the exact problem with communities based around living addictions. If PMO addiction, or any for that matter, is your common trait, then building a community around it means either you become either become free or you stay with your friends. This creates unneeded pressure. The first rule of handling conflict is don't hang around people who are constantly engaging in conflict. No porn groups and semen retention groups systematically lead people to failure, not through their purposeful action but just through the structure of a community itself. First, it creates unneeded pressure. Second, you may ask advice from people that have no idea of what they're talking about. Third, you may try to help people but fail because your only priority should be to help yourself. Fourth, the community may encourage public streaks and external rewards rather than internal ones. Fifth, Groups never led people to truth but consensus. Basically, except for groups based solely around spreading the word, groups like these will hinder and hurt your ability to become free. Conflicting information is the birth of confusion, and many preach messages that seem credible, but that seem legitimate, like they know what they're talking about. But I assure you, in the world that we live in, mistruths run in everything. Is this bad for the group? No. For the individual? Yes. If you look at these groups or forums for a second, you can see the desperation in people. They tell themselves that this time will be different, that this time they will take control of themselves, yet they change nothing. They change nothing in their understanding, and they repeat the same process. After some time, they have broken so many promises to themselves that they do not even trust themselves. They have no confidence, and if they do, they are likely deluded. If you repeat rather than iterate, changing something each time, then you are wasting time. Self-development is its own bubble. You're surrounded by positive messages. Everyone's telling everyone you're all going to be successful, or your gurus are making posts about being happy and blocking out those negative thoughts. But just like any bubble, there's always a burst. Whether orchestrated or not, the self-help world can put you under a massive illusion, the illusion of progress. It's only when you take a second to pause and reflect and realize that nothing has changed. Action faking is an even more lethal form of procrastination because you're tricking yourself into thinking that you're actually making progress. A lot of what goes on today is what many of you are doing right now. Beating yourself up and scribbling notes and saying, I need to do this, and I need to do that, and I need to do... No, you don't need to do anything. All that you need to do is what you want to do. If you stop trying to figure out how to do things the other way people want you to do them, you get to listen to the little voice inside your head that wants you to do things a certain way, then you get to be you. This is the very reason I specify not to read this book, presuming everything I write is true, because if you do not critically think about your life, your circumstances, then you can be led to mistruths as easily as you can be led to truths. Learning is done through the individual, not the mentor. The constant assertion of belief is an indication of fear. So learn what is true, and belief is not needed. Looking for progress. Looking for progress is essentially looking for pleasure. It is the pleasure of self-image, which says, I'm in a better place now than I am before. This is why counting days does not work, while looking for benefits and measuring effectiveness just acts as a substitute for PMO. Counting days is like trying to do things one step at a time, but the reality is, you are creating a staircase where there was not one before. Leaving addiction is not a constant self-battle like how people imagine. You do not fight PMO yourself when you have no dissonance such as wanting PMO but wanting freedom at the same time. When the truth hits home, PMO will not even sound good in theory. The degeneration of contemporary sexual dynamics. Over the following years following this book being written, the hypersexualization of society will likely increase drastically. Degeneracy will become more widespread as healthy gender roles fall apart. These destroyed dynamics will affect the next generation, who will pay the price. The human will become obsessed with identity, and delusion of reality will become the norm. Men will become incredibly weak and feminine due to the constant stimulus and hypersexualization. This also means that those who set themselves apart will be very powerful. The use of hypersexualization will speed these things up also. This will likely bring gender dynamics and modern men to a breaking point. It will affect women too, but mainly men. This will be inevitable. Through all of these environmental factors, be a beacon of light for those who are neck deep in hypersexualization. Those who harness their sexual energy will be incredibly powerful as these societal changes happen. The potential of nootropics, potent supplements, have a large potential for speeding up dopaminergic recovery from porn use and other addictive activities. While they should not be dependent on and are not necessary for those that want to utilize them, they can be effective. With time, the research on nootropics will change and more effective solutions will come out. For continuously updated info on nootropics, visit burgeonbook.org/nootropics. Why are we spilling our drive freely? That life that you're supposed to have inside you, that drive that you're supposed to have to either go out and get women or work yourself up to be attractive and successful enough to get women. The drive inside of you just gets diminished and thrown into a Kleenex. But once your survival needs are met, then what's left is the biggest primitive need, the biggest desire to continue the family line. Once you get rid of that desire, your monkey brain thinks you've achieved most of what you needed to do with your life on a physical level. And so of course you feel lethargic, lazy and tired. Instead of being in this lethargic state where your body acts like it has achieved what it needs in life, you can create the complete opposite state by retaining your semen and doing so retaining your sexual energy. This is called transmutation. Transmutation is the art of directly transferring the kept sexual energy from semen retention into productive expenditures which encourage growth. It may seem weird, but it has been practiced in professional boxing for hundreds of years. Transmutation is not a response to an urge, but rather a constant process. You may think it as simple as not releasing semen. However, retaining the energy is not enough. Learn to transmute it and convert it into success. When I talk about energy, I'm not just talking about bodily energy, but the actual amount of life within you. When you release semen, you spend some of your own life/energy in this process, and this is the trade-off. Sexual energy is such a hurricane of force that needs to find an outlet. It's either going to find an outlet through physical release or through transmutation, in which you lift that energy upwards and outwards to bring your life the fruits of your labor. The desires are in your heart. Also, just a quick note, you may feel a little more on edge, angry due to different changes in your body's chemistry during doing semen retention. Keep your composure, as anger is its own punishment. As an angry person trying to push your head below water is drowning at the same time. Aura/life force. When semen retention is practiced without still craving, something happens when the person gains a sort of aura around them which attracts other people towards them. Some people think this is spiritual means. Some link it to bodily changes, pheromones, or how you carry yourself. However, this effect of a general rise in attractiveness is not a one-off. This seminal energy generally creates an increased attraction towards you. People discuss attraction from women when they talk about this, but this affects all interactions. People may strike up conversations with you more, and generally people find you more interesting, likely also to do with dopamine. You may also notice this aura around, or you may not. But when your dopamine receptors heal, and through transmutation, social interaction will be a lot more interesting. However, stay humble through all this. Rather than making fun of those who were in your current position, be a person of inspiration and interest for them through your approach to life. Outlets for transmutation. There are several outlets for sexual transmutation. These are either physical or mental. Likely the most valuable outlet for sexual energy is creativity, because it has infinite possibilities on what you can create and express. Transmutation does not have a how-to guide. How-tos do not work except for extreme basics. You kind of just get a feel for it when you notice it, and when you do, you realize that you were missing this the whole time. Physical. The first method of transmutation is simply working out. If you exercise, you bring that energy up into your body, and your efforts will be supercharged, meaning your workouts will be filled with the current of your newfound energy and your body wanting to F the world. I try to do at least some kind of exercise every morning, first thing in the morning, and there's either lifting weights or calisthenics, and I highly encourage you to do the same. When you do it early in the morning, your body is the most awake, and it is also a way to enjoy the mornings. Regular exercise also increases the health of your dopamine receptors, in brackets D2/D3. The second method of transmutation is meditation. This is one of the most important transmutative processes, but I think it's often easier and better to meditate after you've worked out. I've just found it to be true that once I've had a workout and got a bunch of oxygen running through my brain, When I go meditate much deeper in, when I meditate, I go much deeper into that meditation, and it's almost like this deep lost trance or this stepping into the silence, a true void. And when I emerge out of it, I have all these insights and a deeper understanding of how I should conduct myself to bring about results and joy in my life. One thing I would advise is that the mindfulness you practice in meditation should not be the end goal, but the goal should be to have mindfulness in every morning, and but the goal should be to have mindfulness in every moment to the point where meditation is no longer needed. Meditation also supports positive dopamine production significantly. Deep work, transmutation effort. Number 3 is to do deep work. Deep work is a term that was coined by Cal Newport, who is a professor at MIT in computer science, and it basically means uninterrupted study. It's the kind of study where you don't do anything else for a period of time and you don't take any breaks from that subject matter, and that you're studying or that endeavor that you're working towards. And it's a very hard thing to do in the modern world because we're addicted to our technology and we're addicted to these quick bursts of dopamine through social media or other dopamine sinks. Your brain consumes a lot of your energy when you study hard, but that's an amazing transmutative practice and an incredibly productive one, because the more you learn, the more you will create, earn and discover. To make an original contribution, you have to be irrationally obsessed with something. Through creativity and obsession towards a goal, you can create what nobody has ever imagined. However, you do not want your obsession to outpace you. Use the determined focus like a tool. Method number 4 is experiencing joy through music and dance, experiencing the present. When you occasionally listen to stuff, just jamming out to some uplifting stuff. While feeling the music, you can be thinking about what you are working towards, but more importantly, the process to get there. And so you just end up turning that sexual energy into a state of tremendous joy. When you're in a state of joy and gratitude and playfulness, and you often find that the law of attraction starts working faster and you end up accomplishing your goals inadvertently. Transmutation method number 5 is to have inspired social interactions. After some time on semen retention, your life has so much more weightlessness and playfulness in this, and so you're just incredibly charismatic around your friends. So in that state of pent-up sexual energy, an incredibly fun and productive thing you could do is just to meet up with your friends, or to meet up with a cute girl that you're into, and just hang out with them. You'll find that you're so much weightier, you're so much more playful, and at the same time you're more inspiring to them, as well as you have more sexual energy available and you have more life within yourself. You can do even better in social interactions when you place a high value on your attention to what the other person is saying. They will respect it, especially if you remember what they say. Creativity and expression. Transmutation method number 6 is having a creative output, either through music, art, painting, poetry, filmmaking, writing, anything creative. You'll find that when you capture your sexual energy, you can have an incredible creative output. This can be really helpful on the journey to create things that you truly treasure. Expression is also a way to recover from things you do not yet understand. Turning hard-to-read thoughts into forms of art is an effective process of recovery. About transmutation, there are also things like cold showers, cleaning your environment, and thinking about the processes to achieve goals, which are not direct ways of transmuting energy, but they definitely support it. However, do not try to add tens of new routines into your day at once and stress over missing timings. You want to slowly but meticulously build up your framework and routine/lifestyle that supports you and your self-growth. But you do not want your routine to be too environment dependent either. It is best to build new actions or habits around simple and accessible things such as tea before bed, food timings, morning showers, and other consistent events. Making what you want to do the easiest option will lead you to do it, and what you want to do is not currently the easiest option. Make it so by changing your immediate environment and, better yet, understanding it. It is true that some things will always be difficult, but in those cases, staying true to your identity and greater purpose should be the reason to do these things. Scott Adams famously said, set up your systems, not goals. Use your judgments to figure out what kind of environments you can thrive in, and then create an environment around you so you're statistically likely to succeed. Energy sinks. Some people do not want to see you succeed. Crab mentality, also known as crab theory, is a better way of thinking best described by the phrase, "If I can't have it, neither can you." The analogy in human behavior is claimed to be that members of a group will attempt to reduce the self-confidence of any member who achieves success beyond the others, out of envy, resentment, spite, conspiracy, or competitive feelings, to halt their progress. Because you're rising in energy and also healing yourself, things will get electrical. Some people in your life may be like this. They see success, and because you have not found it because they have not found it in themselves, they try to bring you down to their level. What you have to realize is that clashing with these people is a waste of time. You're just fighting ignorance, which is a losing battle, and you are showing them they are relevant. Instead, for people who discourage this level of energy, some call them energy vampires, we should be indifferent no matter what they do. Acting indifferent will make them feel weaker. Either they will cave in and ask for your help, or they will spiral into their own negativity. In either case, you do not want to surround yourself with these types of people. If a friend is not someone who encourages your own self-growth, tell them in person directly and unforgivingly the issues you have with them, and if they do not have the humility to change, cut them off. Family is trickier because you can't give up on family, but at the same time, parents or siblings can be negative influences on you whether you realize it or not. For this, I would say to change your immediate environment often. Learn how to deal with human nature and learn how to influence those who are insincere or lack humility. In any case, if you hurt other people because they have expectations of you, that's their problem. If they have an agreement with you, it's your problem. But if they have an expectation of you, that's completely their problem. It has nothing to do with you. They're going to have lots of expectations out of life. The sooner you can dash their expectations, the better. Having a good standard for friends will also set you up for success in all ways. You should not befriend someone who has a negative influence on your energy, even if you are lonely. If you can't find such people, are you really putting yourself out there as much as you really could to meet new and interesting people? Choice. In the end, you can choose meaning in your life, or you can choose comfort. If you do not spend the energy you receive, you will likely waste it via masturbation. One thing you need to realize is that because ammo is mentally linked to porn, you don't want to be using it as a substitute for PMO if you waste your energy via ammo. While ammo has drawbacks, energy can be regathered within a week generally, while with porn, it takes months for the body/mind to recover. Some good advice is to find 3 hobbies: one that makes you money, one that keeps you fit, and one that keeps you creative/helps expression. If you masturbate or have sex too often, it will negatively impact your body and energy levels. Instead of wasting your energy, look for the value within sexual energy, and it can be transmuted into things you find meaningful. This is how you can propel and find movement in your life. Energy expelling outwards and energy going up. Chapter 9. Understandings. Before you can fully understand what it means to choose, you have to know how to decline. Most of our inefficiencies come from what we do rather than what we don't do. You are worthy of freedom. Freedom is not avoidance of what you don't like. Freedom is instead having clarity, and you are worth of having this freedom. In fact, nobody is worthy of this. We have been brought up by family or influences to believe we are not worthy of freedom, that we do not deserve it. However, if you do not deserve it, who does? The reality is nobody doesn't deserve freedom. Night emissions. Another thing you may notice is that you may start to have wet dreams. For those who do not know, they're basically dreams, often nonsensical, of a sexual nature, that naturally occur when not involved in sexual activities. They exist to clear your body out of dead sperm to increase your fertility. The part about these dead dreams people find annoying, however, is that the dreams they have bring back emotions that they used to have as a user. The thing is, you should not have a negative outlook on these wet dreams. Previously, you were lowering your fertility rate to self-destruction. Wet dreams are just a result of natural hormone activity. You should not build up a negative view on these dreams, and you should not look forward for them either, as it just acts as a substitute. Instead, when you have these dreams, understand them to be neutral. If you don't like the dreams, you have the freedom within it to change what is going on. This might be on the edge of lucid dreaming. When a user becomes free, they will have more time available. In terms of amount of time and dedication towards that time, there is a beauty in rediscovering what you used to enjoy, finding happiness out of small moments of small achievements. And when one is bored, it is the birth of creativity, the birth of change. In times of boredom, you may think back to PMOS, because the idea of it in your mind outweighed the idea of meaningful action in the present. Finding the meaning and beauty out of this time with yourself means a lot. Substitution. In substitution, there is no understanding. If you look closely, you will see that substitution is nothing but a search for comfort and security and escape. Not a search for understanding, not a search for truth, but rather a search for an evasion. In substitution, there is a lack of understanding, or at least in the sense that you believe PMO needs replacing in some form. This substitution can happen without notice too. If one tries to replace the instant bodily pleasure porn provides with things such as meaningful work or productivity, then it will not compare dopamine-wise. The key is rather that these things should not be as a direct replacements, but rather a use of newfound energy. One may feel inclined to fear reminders of hypersexualization. However, your frame of mind completely dictates whether reminders have any effect of you. You want to minimize hypersexualization from your environment, but you also don't want to run from it, because that is escape, and escape infers lack of understanding. For things like TikTok, Instagram, forum boards, Discord, it should be highly considered to restrict or remove these social medias from our life. If a service's algorithm uses lewd content as a feature to get watchers stuck in a cycle, no matter the age, then it is a toxic platform. The best example of this, which isn't mentioned here, is Reddit. Questions. If you are curious about how long it will take for your dopamine system to heal, and if you consciously wait for effects, you will either increase anticipation or anxiety. Do not bother with this worry and questioning. The immediate acute benefit is the weight off our shoulders, and this freedom can be found in the present, not in the past or the future. Freedom is found in the present moment. Clarity is not seeing clearly, but realizing you are looking through fog. Chapter 10. Movement. Something I wanted to write about: if you fail to transmute, your sexual energy builds up and you will almost be forced to physically release, otherwise it could be unproductive. The key with this is to understand that you have not failed anything. The delusion that you can be without beating your meat or having sex ever again is delusional. The point of everything here is for someone who wants to be productive and who wants clarity. So if too much sexual energy builds up where it is unproductive, it is alright to masturbate without porn. However, your energy levels will be lower. So take an overview of your different methods of transmutation and see if you're doing enough. Transmutation is a constant process, and it is more valuable than you think. The individuality of truth. When we create new understandings, some part of us wants to immediately spread this message, this understanding, directly to others. The reality is that you cannot make someone directly understand something. You can make them believe something, but then it denies their own intelligence and their own processing abilities, and it will be a waste of time. The questions needed are the ones not asked, and these questions only arise when a person can freely discover something, truly finding what is true by not having a desire for a certain outcome, but by finding things through clarity. You can't help people while drowning. A lot of people who find freedom from destructive activities want to help others too. However, this is a way they avoid themselves. It is a method of procrastination, a delay of the painful realization that you were wrong about ideas you held onto. It is an escape from the self. If you want to help others, you should focus on yourself. While it sounds counterintuitive, if you think on this, you will see its legitimacy. Revelation is the result of internal revolution, and this is only if possible through humility, and most block out this humility and fear that they are wrong. We are social creatures, and we want to be correct and relevant for others and ourselves. When we find out we may be wrong, our default selves will defend an untruth rather than what is true, due to the pain of realizing something you believe in is not true. You can see this through people that believe in certain things, maybe way of life, religion, lifestyle. Without humility, you can end up anywhere. For one who wants to advance and make actual progress without staying in the same place, they must be ready for internal revolution. The reason I have mentioned many times within this material that you must see these understandings for yourself is because otherwise you could believe in false ideas as easily as you could believe in truth. I do not want to take your freedom away from you. The reality is that most self-improvement ideas are around restriction. The free mind is free of restriction, but I understand what is beneficial and does that with a fire-fueled focus. This understanding is a result of humility. Most people have a natural tendency to romanticize about the past, to remember the good things that they experienced and forgot about the bad things. Just think about how people sometimes recount the glory days of their youth, or how older adults may sometimes comment that things were better in their day. In psychological terms, this is known as memory bias, and a person may be more likely to exhibit it when their present life circumstances are difficult or unfavorable. Just because you may be going through tough situations, breakups, or whatever it may be, porn is no saving grace. In fact, it will make it harder for you to deal with these situations. A part of your brain, the basal ganglia, is your autopilot. It does things without you thinking about it, like navigating routes you frequently walk or drive. If porn usage is a daily activity for you, you may automatically prepare yourself to use porn without consciously noticing. It can become so ingrained that it almost feels natural, even though it is completely the opposite. The solution for this is to change your environment to where it is not a thing where you would do or prepare automatically. Give your mind space where you previously felt boredom with porn by changing your immediate environment. Now we're at the end of this book. I could get you to make some promise to yourself, to practice some affirmation, to talk out loud or something. However, I will not do this. I will not even direct you to stop watching porn or to transmute your energy through semen retention. The freedom you have is that you can do whatever you want. You can live a life chasing instant pleasures, or you can live a meaningful and sincere one. When deep understandings are made, changes happen almost automatically. The focus now should be on meaningful action. There's no single permanent solution to happiness. Rather, achieving happiness requires a process of understanding and self-discovery. It is a process of training yourself to see certain truths. Ending note. Many of you may be thankful for this book. You may want to show appreciation, but you have done everything for yourself. If you want to do something positive, purchase a physical copy for a friend who you think may benefit from it, and give opportunity to those who see it for those who you see in a bad place. Thank you for reading. By the way, please do not call this book a guide or a method when talking about it, because that infers I'm directing you to do or be something. I designed this for one to find freedom within themselves, which is the only way. With that said, I love and respect every one of you that reads this book. Peace. Burgeon meaning to grow. Designed 2021 to 2023, and there's a beautiful picture of a forest underneath. There's page 89 with the love heart, and thank you for reading. And then there's extra studies, but I think I'm going to end it there.